So I'm Steve LeBlanc. I'm a sales engineer with InterSystems. My presentation is on our new secure file communication approach. So I'll get into the details of what all that means. I'm going to kind of go through an explanation, and then I'll give a little demo of what is part of InterSystems Iris as our approach to secure file communication or managed file transfer. And then if we have questions, if you can go up to because it's being recorded, if you can go up to the mic if you have questions at the end, we can answer those, or we can pass around the mic or whatever. So off we go. Hello. All right, so what is the use case, the need for secure file communication? So where we kind of observed a problem, as usual, is in the healthcare industry, just from our experience. So a use case for healthcare for secure file communication, right? So doctors at, say, a small physician practice or a lab need to be able to securely send and receive files to some back-end system, some enterprise system. So for example, a PDF, maybe they need to attach a PDF to a patient's record. So that needs to be done in a secure way, say HIPAA-compliant, secure way. They need to be able to run some kind of client software in order to accomplish this kind of handshake, this secure handshake. That involves managing client certificates, which can be a cumbersome task, and it really requires some IT, typically could require some IT knowledge on the client side, which is something that you want to avoid, right? When you're standing up all these, not unsophisticated, but non-technical users to be able to securely send you files, right? That's a cumbersome task. And of course, that's not just a healthcare problem. So, in logistics, you can see a similar problem in commerce, sending invoices. It's just a costly thing for you to do on your own and for you to farm that out to all of the clients to set up all those, all that secure communication. So I want to talk about, managed file transfer. This is just kind of the Wikipedia version of the industry term. So what is it? It's MFT. It's a software service that manages secure transfer files from a computer to another or a system through a network. The term is marketed to enterprises, so it's a business technology as an alternative to FTP or HTTP. And some of the characteristics that would define an MFT use case, the need for reporting or notification of files arriving, auditing. So obviously to be secure, HIPAA compliant, you need to have auditing of who sent what and authentication and everything. Automation of file transfer processes, common tasks like registering users, creating folders, automating that process so that it can be done at scale. End-to-end security and performance metrics monitoring to be set up around all that. I just added that it's important to know that MFT is just kind of it's an umbrella. The same underlying technologies can be used, HTTPS, SFTP. So it's really just the high-level design of the process or explanation of the process, but the technology, it can be implementation specific. So what is InterSystems Approach? So with InterSystems Iris, our approach has been to, rather than develop a client software that each of your clients would install, we are working with market leaders in that segment, and we're interoperating with them. So, I'll get to what those are in a second, but some of the advantages of that, like your clients may already be familiar with at least one of those vendors, or your IT group that's developing this might already be familiar. That should reduce go live, go to market time. And our focus with the implementation is really to enable secure exchange and make it a zero friction user experience for your end clients. So the third-party vendors that we chose to support are Box, Dropbox, and Kiteworks. These are all, proven commercial vendors, proven in the space of MFT, secure file transfer, and developing the client software to do so. Each of these technologies enables a client to authenticate and then to just be able to upload and download files from into InterSystems Iris. It can be done in a secure way. Kiteworks by Accellion is actually HIPAA compliant, and they all have advanced security models, and we'll get to that. They all provide detailed logging and auditing for reporting capabilities. And again, because they're proven in the space, their security infrastructure is up to date. They're always going to stay up with the latest standards. So the technologies that we use and the vendors use for authentication, all three of these vendors support OAuth 2, as do we. So that's how we authenticate with each of the technologies. And they're all the communication is done via RESTful web services, APIs. So we've implemented an MFT API package that implements access to all the standard functionality, and then inheriting from that we have specific classes for Box, Dropbox, and Kiteworks. Each of those has their implementation-specific APIs. Most of the management of these, the creating folders and users and registering users, that can all be done through the management tools of each of the vendors' software. But we want to implement the most common use cases through these APIs that would enable you to be able to script or automate the process of registering new users, providing like a web page that would allow a user to authenticate and then have folders created for them. Just automate that workflow through our interoperability solution. And of course, in addition to all those common API methods that we created, we've got interoperability adapters. So like your standard, similar to your Ensemble inbound and outbound file adapters, we have MFT-specific adapters that will authenticate with an OAuth connection to each of those vendor solutions, pull individual files or groups of files for new files, and operations to send them out once you've processed them on the back-end server side. Right? So where we're providing the value in implementing all these APIs, it allows you to automate that process through the APIs and save the end user time and complexity, right? Okay, so just to kind of illustrate our use case, and when I get into the demo, right? So we've got remote locations, so it's doctor's office, a lab, a pharmacy, running. They're not running InterSystems software on their local PC. They are just running maybe a client tool from one of those vendors, or accessing the web page and uploading, downloading through that securely. And then in the enterprise facility, they're securely exchanging documents. The enterprise facility, such as a hospital, IDN, running InterSystems Iris software. Right? So yeah, just to illustrate, we've got our doctor who wants to supply a PDF into the back-end hospital system, and this is a connection that's done securely, HIPAA compliant, so the auditing that is needed, like to know who sent what, and you need to report on any activity. Those reports are generated by the vendor software. There's no need for you to build the reports. You can generate them and produce the reports needed. All right, so I'm just going to kind of walk through the workflow of like what a typical use case would be. So for registration, we've got our Dr. Bob, who wants to authenticate, wants to get connected, so he just supplies his email address. Some hospital admin or an automated process registers Dr. Bob with the hospital's Kiteworks business account. And again, we're using Kiteworks in this demo. That's what I'm using. And they also allow you to use your own branding on any of the website or the client software, so you can replace with your logo and all that. Right, so an administrator then registers Dr. Bob and goes through the process, or again, automated process of creating the inbound, outbound folders that Dr. Bob will then use to communicate. And then Dr. Bob will receive an email to accept his registration, and that will lead him to add the inbound, outbound folders to his desktop client, or access to the web portal that would allow him to input those files. So that's the registration, and then the workflow is pretty simple for sending and receiving files. Dr. Bob wishes to send a file to the hospital, so he just, on his desktop client, drags it into his outbound folder. Kiteworks is pulling that file, retrieves it, syncs with it, retrieves it, and it can remove the file from the folder or keep it there, however you want to configure that. And then InterSystems Iris then synchronizes with that Kiteworks folder and pulls it into your interoperability production to handle however you want. So we provide a special stream container to pull that in with all the metadata that would come from Kiteworks or Dropbox that you can then handle in a data transform, or whatever workflow you need to do with that file to process it. And then subsequently, when the hospital wants to return a file back to Dr. Bob, they would just place that file in his particular inbox. He may receive some notification, an email, or some desktop notification that there's a new file, and then he simply opens up his inbox, finds the file, drags it to his destination. So that's kind of the workflow. And then I was going to kind of walk through all that in the demo and show the dashboards and the website itself. So if anyone, does anyone have any? Yeah.
Do we have to have Iris to do this?
Yeah, this is part of InterSystems Iris platform. Yep.
We have to wait.
Yeah. Any other questions before I move to a demo? Nope. All right. All right, so I set up just a separate VM that's not running it's not running InterSystems Iris, but we have the Kiteworks client set up here. So, I've got my send to hospital folder right here on the desktop that's synced with Kiteworks. So if I want to, as the doctor, send this, PDF document, I've got a nice little patient note that I'm going to send off to the hospital. So I'm just going to grab a copy of that, drag it into this send to hospital folder, and then Kiteworks can sync periodically or whatever interval, but I'm going to just manually sync it. All right, got that little icon that it's syncing. So if I'm now popping over to the Kiteworks, so if I look at the administrator dashboard, this is where a hospital admin can go and look and see that all the activity that's happening, and this is where reports could be generated. So I can see recent activity. I can look at individual folder activity, manage all the file communication between folders and individual files. Here's my list of activity, and generate reports from X to Y date. Just some background application settings. So that's kind of the administrator portal. If I switch to the actual user view, this would be the view that Dr. Bob can log in order to upload, download files there, instead if he doesn't use the desktop client for whatever reason. Oh, I have to sign in as the client to do that, not the server account. 1 second. Right, so you see my same folders, my send to hospital folder. The file that I sent was removed from the folder, it was deleted, just that's the configuration option I chose. But if I look back, so now my local PC is serving as I'm running InterSystems Iris, and this is my, folders that I'm receiving files from Dr. Bob. So I have this, from Dr. Bob folder. Here I received this, John Smith notes, and you can update the file name with timestamps and whatever you need to do. But so there's my file that I received, and now I'll just send it back. I have a patient summary that I'll, as the hospital, send back to Dr. Bob, put into his inbox. All right. So I go into the send folder, put that in. Now this is a file operation that's running locally on my machine, so it's just pulling this directory, so that gets pulled into InterSystems Iris and processed. And then if I go back into the VM and sync up again, I should get that result back in the from hospital folder. Should. There we go. Right, so there's my important document from the hospital with all the timestamps and everything, and drags in here. So now let's go over and look at the actual production, the workflow that occurred when we transmitted all those files. So back here, I've got a familiar ensemble type production in our InterSystems Iris interoperability functionality. We have our first one interface that is, we have this service that's synced up with Kiteworks, pulling a file in, it goes to a router, and the router can be configured to send it to some folder on my file system. Just to take a look at the settings for the MFT adapter, right? It's an MFT service. We specify an MFT connection. I'll get to that in a second. But there's also a folder. You can point to an individual folder that exists on Kiteworks, or you can point to a series of folders. You can actually build a lookup table of folders and then specify the lookup table here, and it just goes out to pull all of those directories. And you can use regular expressions to set up a mask to pull in just PDFs and JPEGs or whatever file type, whatever mask you have. And a configuration to delete it from the server once you pull it in, or leave it, or put it in like a recycle bin. If we take a look at the message trace, so here's this MFT stream container that's created to handle this incoming file. So so we've got the stream, all this garbled mess at the bottom, but then we have all of the metadata that comes from Kiteworks in this case. So we've got your standard just where it came from and timestamps, and then we have details in JSON from Kiteworks that have all of that metadata that comes along with the syncing and everything. So this is all data you can make use of inside a data transform or a business process. And so that gets passed off to my to hospital folder, and then subsequently when I then drop a file as the hospital into this file service, that gets sent off to some MFT operation with the same using the same authentication, pointing to a different folder and naming it there. So if we take a look at that trace, it's simply a stream container pointing to a local file, and then we get that response back from Kiteworks indicating that the file was uploaded successfully, and here's the metadata around all that for whatever processing you might need to do. So, and then lastly, just to highlight the MFT, the OAuth connection. So here, this is our OAuth connection that we've defined. I'm just calling the API to create a new one just to show you kind of what the authentication is. So I'm providing like the access token, So here we have this new connection. If I could have filled it out in the form as well. It's just easier to run the script. But from here, I can get an access token. It just does the certificate discovery for me, and that just brings me to a Kiteworks, the InterSystems Kiteworks website with the standard OAuth, grant access or deny access as the user. So I can grant access, and now that connection is going to be enabled to be able to securely send files to the server. So that's that's what I got. That was pretty quick. I breezed through that, I guess. But yeah, question.
So I have a question. So let's say, for example, I have a product that has 33 clients.
Yep.
And
Do you want to use the microphone? Sorry, just so it's recorded. So I'll hand it around.
just yell.
Yeah.
Where's the Dropbox?
Right. Need that.
So if I have a product that has 33 clients, physicians, and I use Dropbox or Kiteworks,
Yep.
do I have to have one Kiteworks account for each one of those 33, or can I manage users per Dropbox, per Kiteworks?
Do you mean if you want to use Kiteworks and Dropbox and?
No, let's
Okay.
just stick with Kitebox. Let's say or Kiteworks.
Yeah.
Let's say I have 33 clients that I want to do this for.
Yeah. So you have like a Kiteworks business account.
Right, in a folder for each client?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So you.
then-
And you have to define a Kiteworks user for each client.
Okay, and then I can segregate it so one client can't see the other
Right.
client's
So
folders.
the business account, the server account, essentially that we have in the demo would allow you to, they're the hospital side who can see all the incoming files, but the client account can just have access to a particular folder. So you create an account and just the folder that would be necessary for.
Okay, does Dropbox allow rebranding?
I don't know. Stefan, do you know? Does Dropbox allow branding?
Dropbox, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Do you like Kiteworks better?
If you take a look at the page, if you can show the arrow. If you take a look at the URL, you will see the URL is
Yeah.
intersystems1.kiteworks.com.
Okay.
That's a subdomain. And you can take whatever subdomain is still open. So you can say myapplication.kiteworks.com. That will have your logo on the left side. And you can also brand the client that Steve was using. So the little, can you show that?
Yep. So the client, yeah, there's a little.
Diamond there. That's the Kiteworks logo. You can give this a different logo and also have a branded installer. So the installer wouldn't say Kiteworks something, but it would say my application, whatever, secure file transfer client, whatever. So you can have your own name for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You had a question as well? All right.
Did I see that you can see the contents of the file being transferred?
It was a like
You said
binary
metadata,
stream. Yeah.
That's just the packaging around the file.
Oops, sorry. Yeah. So I'll bring up the trace again. So it was. Oh, wrong trace. Yeah, I mean, here's the actual stream. It's an encoded PDF.
So the contents of the file is not embedded in them in there.
I mean, in this, it's encoded and it's embedded, but this is within, within InterSystems Iris.
Yeah, but if it's not going to stay there, it would, for my purposes, I guess I would go from A to Iris to B. Okay, my customer may ask me, okay, this is what Dr. Bob's sending.
Yep.
I'm not going to ask Dr. Bob to change his format. I want you to do it, me, before you deliver it to us.
So you mean taking a file?
For example, Dr. Bob puts the patient name
Yeah.
mixed case. We want it all.
Okay. So, I mean, in this case, this is a PDF document, right? We're not like doing anything to change it, but it can be any document. It can be any stream of data. So, just like any Ensemble Health Connect production, you can read in any file type, an HL7 or what have you, and process it. Once it's securely transmitted to InterSystems Iris, then you can handle it and process it however you need in a data transform.
Long as the sender can send it that format, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Any question?
So is it one business service per Kiteworks, one business service per Dropbox and so on, or for each client do we need one business service and one business operation?
You don't, so we're able to, in one business service, pull a bunch of different folders that exist within Kiteworks. So instead, we don't just have to pull from a individual folder. So yeah, it can be multiple. And the operation? One per server. Yeah, so yeah, it would be one.
One per server. Yeah?
Wait, so one per server account, one per business account, meaning they could have 30 clients and they all have different folders as part of the same business server account.
Okay, I just think if
Josh?
it would be like hundreds of business services, it wouldn't be very manageable.
But on the operation, is it operation one per client?
So the operation, can we write to multiple? Okay. We can use the same lookup table structure and write out to any number of those. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Okay.
As the three of us talk through it. Thanks. Any other questions? Yeah.
This stream with the data is inside the database, or you are keeping it in an external file?
So this is
What kind of stream is it?
right, the stream container, a
But it,
global stream in this case.
okay.
Yeah.
This other property is data that comes from the service provider. So
The details, you mean?
so the details and the other data, and because the details these providers are giving in JSON, then we can use the built-in Iris JSON dynamic to route on certain data that's in there in the details as well.
Yeah.
Manipulate and access. Each service provider provides details in different formats. So we get the stream and information.
Also, we have to embed the stream because you have to consider there is no physical file, right? We're getting this, yeah. So there is no physical file when you're getting these binaries from Kiteworks or from Dropbox, right? They're directly sending us the data via REST interfaces. So you could take the stream then and store it as a physical file somewhere on your server if you want to. Right?
Which is what I did in the demo.
Which is
yeah.
what Steve did, right? But maybe you don't want to do that, right? It depends on your use case. So that's the reason why we have to embed the stream initially, and then you have to figure out what you want to do with that stream. Store it physically, store it in your file. Don't do anything with it. Maybe you just want the metadata. It depends on your use case.
So in healthcare, right now there's a push for direct messaging, and that has attachment capabilities. So is there any benefit to MFT over direct, or?
Yeah, I mean, so direct requires a HISP, right? And HealthShare is not a HISP. that probably just depends on the use case as well. But I mean, direct, I think, requires a lot more overhead on both
Yeah,
sides. Like
there's a lot of setup with direct, but it seems like meaningful use is sort of pushing everybody to have to do direct.
Okay.
So at some point we can sort of expect, at least in healthcare, that would be available. The other question I had is, so, Dr. Bob is now wanting to send files to multiple agencies that are all using MFT with
Okay.
Kiteworks. Is there any problems there?
So I mean, might need Dr. Bob might need separate folders depending on where he's sending it to, but the desktop client can sync with multiple folders and.
So would he still have like one Kiteworks account?
So I think he authenticates to the business account of the hospital that.
Okay.
Like that's
so
kind of.
it might be multiple
Yeah.
user credentials.
Because otherwise, one hospital could read, if it was the same account, one hospital could read what he sent to the other hospital, which we
Well,
don't want that.
yeah, depending on how it would be configured. Yeah. So, all right. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I just asked about the stream because I was thinking about that this would probably work in a mirror configuration. So we would want to have all the data synchronized to the other failover member, and doing that because the data is inside the database is easier.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we'd have to do something at the storage level.
Right. Yeah.
And that would make things clumsy. That's why I asked about.
Yep. Thanks. Anyone else? No? All right. Got to show the last slide. So yes, please complete the survey. And I just picked the simple slide in this case, but Stefan is the product manager for the MFT. He's graciously decided to help me out with some of these questions. Thank you, Stefan. You can obviously, while you're here, visit the Tech Exchange to learn more if you have other questions about it. You can find me or Stefan, and I didn't put my email address on here, but it's my name at InterSystems.com. But please feel free to reach out, and thank you for attending.